Unpredictable, exciting, and dangerous for both of the combatants, Candace Owens and Smoke. All right, are you ready? Because I have an opening statement that gives a little background for just how we got here. So with your permission, ladies and gentlemen, and this is your opening statement. Debates. Debates are part of American culture. They're part of who we are. Debates captivate audiences because they distill conflict into a pure and high-stakes spectacle of intellect, personality, and persuasion. At their core, they're gladiatorial contests, but rather than picking up a sword and a shield, they're gladiatorial contests of words. Two minds locked in real time. They're forced to think. They're forced to adapt. They're forced to strike under pressure. Viewers crave debates. They love debates. Not really for the information as much as for the drama, the vulnerability, the chance to witness a stumble, maybe a brilliant counterpunch, or even a brief flash of authenticity, which feels lost in a lot of media these days. The format itself creates a great deal of suspense. It's like sport. It's like theater. Rules can constrain the debaters a little bit, but improvisation is where the best debaters truly shine. Improvisation rules the moment. We watch because debates promise revelation. They strip away all the prepared speeches, and they reveal true character under fire. We want to know who will freeze. We want to know who will exceed expectations, and who resorts to things like deceit or cleverness to try to score cheap points. In an age of carefully curated content, a good old-fashioned live clash feels raw. It feels consequential. It invites the audience to judge, and judge not only the arguments, but also the people making the arguments. It's a combination of ideas and human drama. It's what makes debates so special. In America, debates are kind of foundational to who we are. It's foundational to government and culture. The nation's founding documents, for example, emerged from intense debate. The Federalist Papers, the Anti-Federalist Papers. They essentially were nothing more than extended debates in writing. The Constitution itself embeds this debate process. Congress is a deliberative debating body. The courtroom, it's just a formalized debate contest. Elections are contests of persuasion, often peppered with good old-fashioned debate. Free speech, the marketplace of ideas, they all assume that something akin to the truth can emerge from these types of collisions. Culturally, Americans have a long prized fascination with a skilled orator and a sharp exchange of ideas. From town halls to Senate floors to television studios, now to online podcasts, debate embodies the belief that any ordinary citizen can evaluate competing claims. We demand that power must justify itself through reason rather than mere authority. Abraham Lincoln and Stephen Douglas debated 7 times across the state of Illinois. That was for the campaign for the United States Senate back in 1858. Abraham Lincoln was a relatively obscure challenger from the upstart and relatively unknown Republican Party. He faced incumbent Democratic Senator Stephen Douglas. Each event was a single, grueling 3-hour-plus affair in front of large outdoor crowds. The subject was slavery's expansion into the territories. It was framed by Douglas's doctrine of popular sovereignty, and also Lincoln's insistence that the nation could not possibly permanently survive half slave and half free. If you judge the winner by who won the 1858 election, then Stephen Douglas won the debates. The Illinois legislature, which at the time was still choosing senators, voted to reelect Stephen Douglas. But even at the time, popular public perception and historical judgment, now looking back, pretty roundly awards Lincoln the lasting victory. Contemporary accounts and the subsequent publication of the debate transcripts demonstrate Lincoln's moral clarity, but also his rhetorical force. He was a very skilled debater. Lincoln lost the seat, but he gained national stature. And 2 years later, he won the presidency. John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon debated on September 26, 1960. That was in the presidential campaign. Kennedy and Nixon met in Chicago in a television studio, but it was viewed in people's living rooms all over the country. An estimated 70 million people tuned in. It was the first general election presidential debate broadcast live on television. The substance of the debate was domestic policy, but nobody remembers that. Nobody knows what the debate was about. The only thing they remember is the cultural earthquake that came out of the debate, and that was visual, not rhetorical. Kennedy appeared tanned, composed, camera-ready, handsome. He wore a dark suit. He spoke directly into the lens. Nixon was recovering from illness. He didn't wear any makeup. He wore a light suit that many say blended into the background. He looked pale and sweaty. He looked terrible. Radio listeners judged Nixon the overall winner based on argument and experience. But television audiences, who vastly outnumbered radio listeners, overwhelmingly favored John Kennedy. The public perception of Kennedy's victory was based on poise and youth and mastery of this new medium of live television. Kennedy went on to win a very tight presidential contest. And then there was the very strange debates between William F. Buckley Jr. and Gore Vidal. Buckley and Vidal faced each other. There were a series of televised debates staged by ABC television during the 1968 party conventions. And in one of the clashes, the August 28 debate in Chicago during the Democrat convention, Buckley and Vidal began discussing the Vietnam War. They started talking about the political conventions. And they even ventured into American culture. And what began as a polite discussion quickly descended into personal warfare. The most memorable moment of the entire debate came when Vidal labeled Buckley a crypto-Nazi. Buckley responded by calling Vidal a queer, and he threatened to punch him. There was no formal winner, but ratings soared. People loved it. The public did not seem to mind at all that the event ceased being a contest of ideas and turned into blood sport for entertainment. Buckley later expressed regret. Vidal did not. He actually reveled in this newfound notoriety. Culturally, the debates are largely credited with kicking off the modern era of adversarial political commentary. You want to know what that is? Turn on any cable news channel. It marked a stark shift from deliberative argument toward spectacle. Debates have long been peppered with dishonest and tricky tactics. Even the classic encounters that preceded Buckley Vidal in 1968 featured underhanded tactics. In the Lincoln-Douglas debates, for example, Douglas repeatedly painted Lincoln as an advocate of racial equality, which, at the time, shockingly, was an insult. It was designed to inflame white people. Douglas did not want white people in Illinois liking Abraham Lincoln. It didn't want to focus on Lincoln's limited opposition to slavery's expansion. Lincoln even engaged in a little bit of his own. He pressed Douglas into doctrinal corners that alienated Southern Democrats. He knew the political damage it would cause, and he knew it would serve his overall larger political purpose down the road. Even in the 1960 Kennedy-Nixon debate, preparation itself became a form of asymmetric battle. Kennedy's team meticulously managed everything about his appearance, the lighting, the clothing, even his rest, while Nixon just sort of showed up. He refused makeup, and he was not very well recovered from an illness, and he was visually compromised. It was an unintentional self-sabotage, but it undoubtedly was strategic negligence, and it could have changed the election. Buckley and Vidal, they changed the whole game. They elevated personal attack to high art. Vidal systematically baited Buckley with rehearsed insults and insinuations about his character and his courage. Buckley's explosive response crossed into crude ad hominem, and it undercut his conservative image. But these maneuvers like scare tactics, image manipulation, and deliberative provocation, they're not rare. They're planned, they're plotted, they're schemed, they're rehearsed. They're part of the art of modern debate, and they reveal the line between legitimate persuasion and manipulation. And they reveal that it's always been fundamental to American debates. And whether we agree with the tactics of modern debate or not, they're here to stay. We see them nearly every single time two or more people line up in front of an audience to debate. And they remind us that while debate may be fundamental to the American idea, debates are exciting because they're unpredictable and dangerous. That is your opening statement. And we have a debate tomorrow that I think could be both unpredictable, exciting, and dangerous for both of the combatants, Candace Owens and Smoke Boy.